to the Bobby Jones Clubhouse, the Bobby Jones Golf Course, the Holmes exhibit, which we will also learn about later this afternoon, and just enjoy the ambiance of this historic building and this historic golf course that all got started in the 1930s when we will talk about the history of how it all came together. My name is Tony Smith. I have the pleasure of serving as president of the Friends of Bobby Jones Golf Course. It's a volunteer effort by a bunch of hackers that come out and play golf out here, thinking, well, maybe we should just come together and try to put a little historical importance to this course and this clubhouse, beautify it. So we have done so with all these pictures in this room and the Holmes exhibit in the next room there. Care of Doug Balch's handiwork. We've installed benches, we've installed patio tables, umbrellas, you name it, whatever we can to make people enjoy this beautiful clubhouse and this golf course a little bit better. It's been a labor of love for 5 years. It just came out of a need to improve this course just a little bit, and lots of volunteers have come together. You'll hear two of our historians today, Herb McCoy and Doug Balch, that have been over to Emory and dug out of the archives over there many of these photographs, and we all have become historians, not quite of the ilk of Candler Park's historian here, but we'll try to give it our best shot with Bobby Jones. So the course all started in 1932, but the reason we're here today is care of the L.P. Grant Mansion, which served and still serves as the home for the Atlanta Preservation Society. I'll give a plug to our host. This is the group that put us all together. I think it was formed around the Save the Fox era, and that was one of the catalysts for that. We're using some of the parallels of Save the Fox for our Save Historic Bobby Jones here. But this is where it is currently housed, and we will talk about how this interplays to the reason you're here today. But this is what it looks like today, the Atlanta Preservation Center, which is down near Hill Street, near the stadium. Herb and I got to go to the preparatory meeting for this and enjoyed touring this house. It used to be a two-story traditional mansion down there, and this was actually on this southwest corner, the room where Bobby Jones was born. And this Lemuel Grant was the founder of Grant Park. He was a railroad baron back in railroad days, made his money in the railroads pre and post Civil War, and donated the land for Grant Park. But of historical significance to us, this was where Bobby Jones was born. Now, as another connection to this event, the course has a tennis center over here called Bitsy Grant. Well, guess whose great-grandfather, guess who was the great-grandfather of Bitsy Grant? Lemuel Grant. So there we have two connections to this house that is the Atlanta Historical Society or Atlanta Preservation Society, a home place. And I recommend you go see it. It's restored, but it is restored kind of like we're trying, with some of the original walls still showing. Our walls were always under reconstruction here, but this is the real thing, and this has got an awful lot of Atlanta history tied to it. But before all of that, this land was the home to the Battle of Peachtree Creek. July 20th, 1864 was where the Civil War, as it relates to Atlanta, started. The Confederate Army changed generals on 4 days before this, and traditionally the Confederate Army had been in defense retreat from Chattanooga to Resaca to Kennesaw to Atlanta, where all the earthworks were all set up, and the armies of Atlanta were lined up along Collier Road, just south of here. Well, the order came down from Richmond to change generals because we're no longer going to just defend. We're going to attack. And on the afternoon of July 20th, 1864, this battlefield was where the first attack occurred in the Battle of Atlanta. needless to say, it was not successful. But this is not a good map of this battlefield. I'll just have to tell you about this. You're sitting in the red dot right now at the Clubhouse, and we are facing south. The Union Army had come from the north and crossed Peachtree Creek, that curved Peachtree Creek, and were resting here on the afternoon of July 20th. The Confederates were supposed to attack at 1 p.m. They didn't get their act together till around 4, which allowed the Union Army to run, get prepared, get out of their restful sleep after they've been bathing in Peachtree Creek, and charge up the hill toward Piedmont Hospital, which is that direction. But this was where they had all gathered after previously camping out up near Wachovia's building in Buckhead on Far Road. But this regiment took on the state of Mississippi's regiment. This was the Confederates' best shot at it. They came down a ditch and then tried to charge up a hill, and that was not a great move, but they really had this, they had almost broken through the Union lines and trying to get behind the Union lines. But Geary's artillery came up, and they had better cannons than the Confederates had willpower. And the Confederates had a lot of screaming and yelling and rifles, but they didn't match the cannons. But that is where the Battle of Atlanta started, and we think that's significant. Just there's a little road going into the Bitsy Grant Tennis Center, and that is where the first Battle of Atlanta started. That event happened 152 years ago. A couple of years ago, we had the author of this book, Bob Jenkins, come speak to us out on the patio. After this event, I welcome you to go outside on the patio and just take a look at the view. But you will be looking you'll be looking off to your left where Ward's regiment was. This is a big floodplain. You won't be able to see where this first Battle of Atlanta, Geary's artillery occurred up there. But just looking out over the floodplain, you'll get a feel for what the battlefield looked like. Atlanta had denuded everything. All the trees were cut down because they needed them for blockades and building things. So it was a pretty open-looking view, but the plan was to let the Union forces cross the creek, and then when they, quote, successfully attacked, they would have no place to retreat to except back into the creek. So it was a good plan, but it just didn't work. So at this point, I'll turn this over to Doug Balch, our first historical speaker, who'll give you kind of a feel for the life of Bobby Jones.
This
Right button.
okay. Who knows a lot about Bobby Jones? Raise your hand. Come on, don't be shy. Who knows very little? Okay. Well, this is a picture of him. Like this says, born in 1902. This is him in 1916 at age 14 at the U.S. Amateur in Marion in Philadelphia. And he reached the quarterfinals as a 14-year-old. And honestly, I don't think there's an example in history of a 14-year-old competing in a sport with grown men. Now you get gymnasts are 14 and they're the top gymnasts, but they're competing against other 16-year-olds. But this is really not another example of this. And he really became a national star. He's really maybe the first child star of the modern mass media era. And he did lose in the quarterfinals. And it's one of the reasons why he was known as Bobby his whole life, because he got introduced to everybody as a child. And he actually, as we know from child stars, it's a very stressful experience. He became a very private person later, and it's maybe one of the reasons he retired early. He did not like being called Bobby when he was an adult. His friends called him Bob. If you go down to Georgia Tech, where he's an alumnus of Georgia Tech, they have a plaque tribute to him, and it's to Robert T. Jones Jr. People that really knew Bobby Jones did call him Bobby Jones. But it's the marketing of Bobby Jones. It's sounds real good. It's what he's known as, and it's always going to stick with him. But we do find, we have a little movement going to rename the clubhouse. If we ever get that done, we'll probably call it the Robert T. Jones Jr. Memorial Clubhouse. just out of that respect for what probably would have been his wishes. Now, the thing about him now, this is fast forward 10 years later, right? Now, in those 10 years, he continued to compete at a very high level, but really didn't win a lot. He kept coming in second, you know? And at the time, Walter Hagen was sort of the great golfer of the era. It was widely considered a better golfer than Bobby Jones, until 1926, when he became the first golfer in history to win what was then called the double. And that's the British Open and the US Open, winning them both in the same calendar year. It's a surprisingly difficult thing to do. Only 5 golfers have done that since Bobby Jones, which is kind of amazing. And, you know, what are we, 90 years now? Anybody name them? Anybody want to take a guess? The other 5 golfers? No. No. Woods is the last person to do it. Gene Sarazen, Ben Hogan, who only played in 1 British Open, by the way, and won it. Tom Watson and Lee Trevino. So, no Nicklaus, no Hogan. Now, the thing is, so to explain, this is Scioto. It's in Columbus, Ohio, right? And when he won that, this is when Bobby Jones' fever started for Earth. He'd been a well-known character. He was a national figure, but this is when he became like household. And he is a sports star of the 1920s, equal to Babe Ruth, Jack Dempsey. And the city of Atlanta got swept up in the fever, and that's what really created this place. We've got news articles that are posted around here. By August, this was in June of 1926. By August, they already had plans in place. They had been talking about a Confederate Memorial Park somewhere around here, because the Battle of Peachtree Creek did extend for miles and miles up and down Peachtree Creek. This wasn't the only place, but you know there was action right around here. So they carved it out. And, what's really kind of sad when you read the news articles from 1926 when they were planning this is they originally intended the park to go all the way down Peachtree Creek to the Chattahoochee River, 5 miles. And we've got a news article that we post on our Facebook page, Save Historic Bobby Jones. I'll give you a link to that. Really advise everybody to keep their eye on that and watch our articles because it's all kinds of interesting little factoids we're turning up. The article, I mean, they had this whole thing approved. This article says the land developers on board. They had a meeting with, you know, all the big shots at the time, the mayor, John White, who was the parks commissioner, all a done deal. And then boom, we're at Howell Mill Road. Why? Nobody knows. Another little interesting thing about Scioto, again, I mentioned it's in Columbus, Ohio, and people know who Jack Nicklaus is, right? He's a much more famous sort of modern golfer. Well, his father was named Charlie Nicklaus. And he was 13 years old in 1926, and he attended this event and followed Bobby Jones around for 4 days and became completely, you know, a hero worship that never died. The flame never died with Charlie Nicklaus. And he became a very successful businessman later, joined Scioto as a member, taught Jack to play golf there. So there's really a direct link between kind of this place and Jack Nicklaus. And ultimately Tiger Woods, because Tiger Woods grew up the same way Jack Nicklaus did. Jack Nicklaus' goal was to beat Bobby Jones' records. You know, that's what he played golf for. And Tiger Woods the same thing. So it's really, if Bobby Jones had not won the 1926 US Open, golf history would be different somehow. I mean, I'm sure maybe Jack Nicklaus would have never played golf. We don't know. So that's kind of an interesting part of this. Now, anybody know who Clifford Roberts is? He was the chairman of Augusta National for 45 years, right? And he met Bobby Jones in 1925, right? And one of the first things they talked about was building a golf course together in Augusta. So Bobby Jones retired in 1930, won the Grand Slam. By the way, that was his second double, okay? So not only have just 5 players won the double since, he won it twice, right? While going to Emory Law School. Okay? You know, the guy never practiced. But anyway, he had this idea, right after Scioto, he basically decided to retire and become a lawyer after that. He didn't realize he's about to win 8 of the next 11 majors. You know, I think he was basically ready to hang it up. He just couldn't lose again. And he kept going for another 4 years because it's really one of the highest winning percentage streak in majors ever, by triple what he did from 26 to 30. And so he just kept playing. And finally, when he won all 4 in 1930, which got the picture up there. You got a picture here, too? That's the 27 amateur. This is him at, this is a great picture. When he won the British Open at St. Andrews in 27, that's part of the streak he went on. He was terrified. He wrote about this. And you see a lot of pictures of him afterwards. He's surrounded by these burly, off-duty Atlanta police officers who basically guarded him for the next 3 years around the golf course because they really almost killed him. They loved him up there, but they just didn't have good crowd control. And this is the same picture here. And this is O.B. Keeler. He was a journalist that was very close to Bobby and chronicled him. And I always like to point out that he got photoshopped out of that one. It's the same picture. No O.B. I don't know what happened. But I don't imagine O.B. Keeler's too happy with that picture. So we got 2 doubles in Grand Slam. So now this is the thing about what Tony didn't mention that's a little different about this golf course versus some of the other Phoenix Wise things, is we're presenting some unknown history of Atlanta here. And what is unknown is we have a lot of evidence that he was on this side of this course helping design it as a trial run for Augusta. Because it was, he's not a wealthy man. His family wasn't wealthy. He planned to retire, which he, again, is very famous for being an amateur and not getting paid for playing golf. He was taking a big risk building Augusta National. We think that he was here at another course called Radium Springs, which I think Herb will talk about. And Herb actually uncovered a lot of this stuff. Herb's going to talk in a second more about the clubhouse. But if somebody wants to give me their email address, we've got extensive documentation that we believe he co-designed this golf course. And he really only co-designed another golf course after Augusta, which was Peachtree Country Club in Brookhaven, which was a place he built really just to be away from the world. Because I think people started getting on his nerves at Eastlake, just coming up to him. And one of the reasons he built Peachtree in Brookhaven was to have a place where he could be, left alone. In the other unknown history, Mike Holmes is going to talk about, the fact that this building has a civil rights history, and his dad, Alfred Holmes, is another guy that's just virtually unknown. It's just stunning that his story's not out there. There's no Wikipedia page. You go to the Atlanta Civil Rights Walk of whatever, there's no Alfred Holmes. And that's another thing that, along with Mike and Herb and some other folks like Blake Brown, who's not here, have, tried to bring attention to that here also. So I'm done. Unless somebody's got a question.
You want to show a couple pictures of the construction?
I'm not done here, right? And this is the groundbreaking ceremony in February of 1929. Fox Theater opened Christmas 1929, Christmas Day. So it was the same, they were just started building this place the same year as the Fox. Opened in 1933, Augusta National and Bobby Jones Golf Course opened the same month in January 1933. So there's a connection there. And this is him playing an exhibition around here. Now, he'd been retired for 3 years. One of his biographers says that he only played in 10 exhibitions the rest of his career after he retired. And those were only for charity. So this is actually a very rare appearance. And not only that, he came back in 1941 to play another exhibition when they opened the clubhouse. Again, it's a little more evidence that he had a closer bond to this place. I mean, he didn't have to play an exhibition. He could have showed up and just said, hey, great, thanks, bye. It's very stressful for him. He didn't like doing this stuff because, again, he really valued his privacy. It's one of the reasons he retired. So for him to come out here, and by the way, one day some guy came up to me and said, this is my dad. His caddy, and he was a worker at Atlanta Steel Works down at Atlantic Station. It was a big steel factory, right? And they had a tournament. They had a tournament there too. The winner of the tournament was going to get the caddy for Bobby Jones at the exhibition. And he told me that his dad won. Still waiting for that guy. We lost him. Okay,
I have a question.
yeah,
Who is the official designer of the golf
John
course?
Van Cleek. We didn't get into that because, I don't want to put anybody to sleep.
Herb's gonna do
But
that.
Okay.
you didn't know Van Cleek, right?
Yeah.
Okay, he'll talk a little bit about Van
Thank
Cleek and his partner, Wayne Stiles.
Let's see if we can talk about the designers in just a minute. I'm going to talk about the designers of the clubhouse first. And when the exhibition was played in December 1933, there was no clubhouse here. And there are three reasons there was no clubhouse here. The city didn't have any money, the county didn't have any money, and the Chamber of Commerce, which was doing a lot of promotion because he was considered a golf hero, also didn't have any money. If you remember, it was the Depression. So this clubhouse was not built until 8 years after this exhibition. Eugene Haynes, developer of Haynes Manor, was a gentleman who really pushed from day one to get this golf course built and this clubhouse built. He gave 36 acres to the park back in 1926, about 20 acres on the other side of the creek and about 16 acres on this side of the creek. And that was for the park itself and for the golf course. In 1930, that's the year of the Grand Slam, Eugene Haynes, I think, had a epiphany that Bobby Jones could win this whole thing. So he developed a plan for this particular clubhouse that we are in. And he wanted it to be a memorial to Bobby Jones. He wanted it to last for eternity. He was in the plan. He was going to raise the money to build the clubhouse. He was hoping to get granite donated to the clubhouse. He was hoping to get marble dedicated and given to the clubhouse. None of that actually happened because, again, lack of funds. But his plan was approved, and so Haynes moved forward and decided to give a lot. He gave a 300 by 300 lot for this clubhouse, and it's prime property in Haynes Manor, and this is it. It overlooks the golf course. A beautiful lot that he gave. And then there we go. They developed the Edwards and Saylor, who are architects in Atlanta. They started that firm in 1915, were selected. The plans were done in 1934, and old golfers here tell us that the plans are right here in this closet, but they don't exist. So we have not been able to find the architectural plans for this clubhouse. A couple things I want to mention to you. There's some cast stone panels over the windows and doors of the clubhouse, as some of you have noted. There are a total of 6, 3 in the front, 3 in the back. You will not be able to see the 3 in the back because when they remodeled in 1951, they've been covered. So you can't see them, but they are 6 of these stone panels. They're thought to be the work of Julian Hoke Harris. Larry Preston, who was the former historian of the club, did a lot of research on this and determined that's who had done the design work for the panels. If you recall, he did the medal for Jimmy Carter's inaugural, and we're going to show those panels in just a second. And then the clubhouse, again, was dedicated in 1941. Jones came back, played an exhibition that was shortened because of the rain. He played with Doc Kirby and Louise Suggs. If you're not golfers, you don't know the name of Louise Suggs. She played a lot of golf here. She was a good friend of Bobby Jones, and she's the co-founder of the LPGA. So she is, for non-golfers, she is very well known. Again, the clubhouse, we got Doric columns holding the portico, and you see these cast stone panels. This is a picture from the golf course, really a 2-story building here. When they closed the patio, we lost, the panels are still there, you just can't see them. This is, the building was built by the WPA, And our suspicion is that the combination of the architects, city officials, and Bob Jones were the ones who got the WPA to help with this building. This is a picture of New York. On the far left is John Van Cleef, who is one of the architects of the course. And then Bobby Jones is on the right, and then next to Bob Jones is a WPA official. And Bob Jones had just been to Washington. Don't know what he went for, but we feel like that he played a role in bringing the WPA in. Again, this is a picture of the panel. I think this is very interesting. On the bottom left, you'll see the round golf ball, and above the ball are the thistles. And these thistles are from Scotland, which is the origin of golf. And then next to that, in the panel, two birds. And the birds, of course, are the phoenix representing Atlanta. And then in the center is a fasces. And some of you may know what a fasces is. I was not aware of it. But it's a bundle of rods that was Etruscan and Roman times, talked about strength. And it was a bundle of rods with a ribbon, and at the top is a double axe. And so Harris, that's not a golf bag. That's the fasces of rods, and then he substituted for the axe at the top, golf clubs. Find that very fascinating. Architects are quite, Edmonton, Sale are quite famous on this. This is Agnes Scott. This is Fannin County Courthouse. This is the post office in Columbus. They have something like 24 buildings on the National Historic list. All right, let's talk just quickly about the architects for this particular golf course. John Van Cleef and Wayne Stiles. Note that they had offices in Boston, New York, and St. Petersburg. And St. Petersburg is important because that's where Van Cleef met Stiles. They were both doing different projects in Florida. That's where they met and eventually became partners. They became good friends of Walter Hagen. They're good friends of Bob Jones. They were prolific designers, I think 140 courses that they designed, and they're considered to be designers in the golden age of golf. Picture John Van Cleef, a lot of formal education, degrees in architecture, landscaping. He has a master's degree. He taught. His degrees are from Cornell. He taught at Cornell. He also taught at the University of Illinois. And for golfers, the only other big graduate of Cornell in golf architecture is Robert Trent Jones, who designed Peachtree for Bob Jones. You can see the kind of equipment he had to work with. This is Wayne Stiles. He didn't have a formal education in architecture. He worked as a male office boy with a design firm, and after about 10 years, he went out on his own. Was a good golfer, an amateur golfer, competed in several of the state championships. This is a picture of Walter Hagen. Next to him is Wayne Stiles, and then John Van Cleef on a job, probably in Florida. This is the design of this particular course. We found this in the Atlanta Constitution. Again, old timers tell us they had those designs here, but they are long gone. The course is pretty similar to the way it was designed originally. That's Bob Jones in New York. This is Van Cleef is the second from the left, and then Bob Jones. They were looking at a project in New York. And then the firm designed several courses in Georgia. Doug and I really concluded that probably all of these courses came about because of the contact between Van Cleef and Bob Jones. The firm dissolved in 1932, and it's interesting that Wayne Stiles continued to design out of his Boston office solo. John Van Cleek, however, went to work for the city of New York and to redesign all of their public golf courses and built some new golf courses in New York City. There's something like 75 courses still in existence. 25 of those probably still follow the same design. This is Walter Hagen's home course in Pasadena Yacht Club in St. Petersburg, one of the courses that they designed. That's Williams College. The Stony Lake, that's in Massachusetts. Woods Hole. And then two others. These are public courses in New York City, La Tourette. And this is the Split Rock course in New York at Pelham Bay. So before Michael steps up, let me just remind everybody, we have 3 white papers here. One is on the design of the course, one is on the general course, and one is on the design of the building. So I am delighted. Michael Holmes is going to step up here and talk to you just a minute. He's our special guest today, and you're going to enjoy what he has to say.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
My name is Michael Holmes. I'm the son of Alfred Tuff Holmes, the grandson of Dr. Hamilton Mayo Holmes, and the nephew of Oliver Wendell Holmes. Those were 3 of the foursome that came to the Bobby Jones Golf Course in 1951 in order to play a round of golf. They were turned away. They were turned away because they were African American. Although my granddad had been practicing medicine here in the city of Atlanta since 1911, and my father was an entrepreneur, my uncle was a pastor, and their foursome partner was a major real estate owner in the city of Atlanta, they could not play at any public venue that whites were involved with. They were relegated to play in only one place here in the city of Atlanta, and it was a place called the Lincoln Country Club. It was a ratty 9-hole golf course on the southwest side of the city. Now, let me just give you a little background and to show you what led up to this. My dad was a championship golfer who was a 3-time intercollegiate golf champion in 1937, 38, and 39. He attempted to play in the NCAA tournament in Kansas City in 1939, but was turned away because he was African American. Subsequent to 1939, my father moved to Detroit, Michigan to work during the Second World War. During the period of time that he was in Detroit, he won the Michigan Amateur Championship and the Ohio Amateur Championship. Upon his return to Atlanta in 1948, my father had compiled a record of 3 Southern Negro Amateur Championships and 4 National Negro Amateur Championships. My dad was a superb golfer. He was used to playing on courses that were well maintained, well kept. So in that particular point in time, 1951, you can imagine, my dad is chomping at the bit. He's playing in a ratty golf course. Bobby Jones Golf Course is one of the premier golf courses in the South. It's named after the most prominent golfer in history at that point in time. So my dad, his father, his brother, and their best friend came out here to Bobby Jones to play golf and were turned away. They subsequently said, we can't let this stand. We're going to remedy this some kind of way. So So back in April of this past year, the Friends of Bobby Jones Golf Course have been involved with an effort to make sure that the Bobby Jones Golf Course and the Bobby Jones Clubhouse continues in its illustrious history going forward. I became a part of an effort at that point in time to help make sure that this historical building and this historic golf course would be maintained in a manner that was commensurate with its place in history and its future. So I came together with the Friends of Bobby Jones Golf Course and converged our efforts to save this building, to preserve and enhance this building. There's a history here that I like to say this is where the civil rights, the Civil War, and a city too busy to hate came into convergence. With that, we put forward an effort to create an exhibit that would tell this story. Bobby Jones' story, Alfred Tuff Holmes' story, Holmes versus City of Atlanta, major undertaking that my dad, my granddad, my uncle pursued all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court to get a ruling in November of 1955 that said that you could not keep African Americans from public venues. And my dad used to like to always say, my taxes paid for this thing, so why can't I use this thing? And so he had that kind of sensibility about himself. So in 1955, this course, the U.S. Supreme Court rendered a decision in Holmes versus Atlanta that we have characterized as changing the game. From that point forward, it became open that the city of Atlanta could not say that you cannot be on the same venue as whites and you have to be separate. We came together and created an opening here on November the 7th that we had about 100 plus people here at the opening. We had people such as the Attorney General of the state of Georgia. We had several people from the Atlanta Bar Association, from King and Spalding, from Thomas Kennedy Sampson and Tompkins, which two of the original lawyers that my dad engaged were founding members of the Thomas Kennedy Sampson firm. We went all the way to the Supreme Court with Thurgood Marshall as our counsel. One thing I say about my family, when they go after something, they go first rate. So just to give you an aside, some of you may not know, but my brother Hamilton Holmes was the first African American to desegregate the University of Georgia in 1961. So can we see, 1951, my dad, my granddad, and uncle. 1961, my brother. 1911, my granddad set up his medical practice here in Atlanta on Auburn Avenue. So there's something about those ones that I really like, it's a little rhyme to that. But we did this opening out here with the great, that's a picture of my dad as an amateur golfer. Over those years, you can imagine, my dad during his prime years was a championship golfer. But he could not compete. I just looked at this and I saw that Bobby Jones won his first tournament in 1916. My dad was born in 1917. And so, although Bobby Jones could play anywhere he wanted to in the world, my dad couldn't. So, here's a little background on what we have been talking about here. This went all the way to the Supreme Court. My brother's case went all the way to the Supreme Court. That's what we had to do just to be able to get the best or utilize the best. We had to sue people. We had to say, you cannot keep me out. What we did here, ladies and gentlemen, is we converged our efforts. Bobby Jones Golf Course, friends of Bobby Jones Golf Course, the family, the Holmes family, came together and said that this is too important of a venue for it to be lost in the event that this Bobby Jones Golf Course is turned into a 9-hole golf course with this building being abandoned. I thought that that made no sense whatsoever. That's why I joined this. That's why I came to this particular effort, because I think that this is a worthy history that we should enhance and preserve. I looked at this and said that we have an opportunity here to do something of great consequence. I gave a talk this past Thursday to the museum studies class at Georgia Tech. 28 young people plus their teaching assistant and their professor were in this space this past Thursday. We talked about this exhibit. We talked about the story and how these stories converge. But we also talked about what do they take away from this? How can they look at this and see how do you become a storyteller so that you have lasting value? So they went around and took a look at the way that this exhibit has been laid out. And they were totally impressed with how the Bobby Jones story, the Tough Holmes story, have come together to form a great sense of this is a historical venue that must be saved, that must be viewed as a place that is in jeopardy, and that if we are going to truly be shepherds, then we need to make sure that we shepherd the past into the future and make sure that these stories are told to the next generation. I was surprised when I moved back to Atlanta in 2011 that there was no mention of my family's efforts in any permanent venue here in Atlanta. I was surprised. I had been in New York for 40 plus years, and I just did not know. So when I saw an opportunity to have a permanence of the story, then I decided I was going to work with Tony and the rest of the friends of Bobby Jones to make sure that my great nephews and great nieces and so forth would know the story of their forebears. Kids today don't know what happened 10 years ago, let alone 50 years ago. They don't know the struggles that people went through. So I think that, as I looked at this is an opportunity for me to say, we don't always have to be at odds. We don't have to be at each other's throats and necks. We can converge. We can come together around an idea that makes sense, and we can work that and make it happen. My interest here is to make sure that the history is not forgotten, and that the historical places are not next generations of kids can understand that how important that was on that particular day at North Fulton Golf Course, December the 24th, 1955, the first day that African Americans publicly played on a public venue in the city of Atlanta. That was my dad right there with the tam. That was my uncle on the right-hand side, and it was Charles Bell in the middle. One thing I always used to tell Mr. Bell, I said, you was such an elegant guy. He wore bow ties when he was playing golf. I thought that was such a great way to be, a gentleman. My dad, my uncle, my granddad, they were all gentlemen, but they were aggressive gentlemen who said that this is what we want and we're going after it. That was the breakthrough, and that's that picture again. You can see that house in the back. To any of you that know North Fulton Golf Course, you will recognize that. But on December 24th, they played out at North Fulton. On December 25th, 1955, they played here at Bobby Jones. They did that because they got wind that there were some people waiting on them out here that may have created a problem. So they played at North Fulton first to break through, then came here to Bobby Jones on the following day to play here at Bobby Jones. This is a worthwhile effort on the part of us to save this old clubhouse, to preserve and enhance it for multi-generations beyond us, so that they can see that there are these old places that have a life to them. This is about life. This is not about a relic. This is about life. If we can make sure that we keep places like this in good form, then we will do all of our progeny a real good deed. So I want to thank you all so very much for listening to me today, and I hope that you will take time to take a look at the breadth of this exhibit, both Bobby Jones and the Tough Holmes, so that you can get a full sense of what's going on here. Are there any questions that I may be able to answer for you? Would certainly like to. Yes, sir. Yes, in 1983, Mayor Andy Young and the City Council renamed Adams Park Golf Course the Alfred Tubbs Holmes Memorial Golf Course, and that's over on the southwest side of the city. When I went out to that golf course, when I came back to Atlanta, I was really appalled at how poorly kept it was. And, you know, it was one of those kind of spurs for me as saying, I can't let something that has my name's dad on it, my dad's name on it, look like this. My interest was piqued. And then this came along, this gave me an opportunity to say, hey, let's make sure that, let's do something about this. I want my dad's name to be held in highest regard. And this was part of my effort to make sure that that takes place. Any other questions?
Mike, last question.
Yes.
Last week, maybe this audience would like to hear, the name Tuck.
Yeah.
Where does the name Tuck come from?
You know, I just did a recent radio interview, and they asked me that same question. I don't know where Tuck came from. Tuck was a nickname that he got when he was very young. I don't know if there was some cartoon character